Far East armor. How a Soviet factory outsmarted Japan's war machine. Picture this. It's 1945, and World War II is winding down in Europe. Nazi Germany has just surrendered, but on the other side of the world, in the rugged Soviet Far East, the fight is far from over. Imperial Japan, battered but still defiant, is holding strong in Manchuria with a massive army ready to challenge the Soviets. In the middle of this tense standoff, a factory in Khabarovsk, later known as Dalenergomash, steps up to the plate. Its workers and engineers take aging tanks like the T-37, T-38, and BT-7 and transform them into weapons capable of standing up to Japan's forces. This is a story of innovation, determination, and the kind of can-do attitude that Americans can relate to. It's about ordinary people doing extraordinary things in the face of impossible odds. In this massive deep dive, we'll explore how these tanks were upgraded, why it mattered, and how a single factory in the middle of nowhere became a game-changer in the Soviet-Japanese War. We'll mix in historical facts, economic analysis, and my own thoughts to give you a front-row seat to this incredible saga. So, grab a coffee, settle in, and let's roll into this untold story of World War II. The story of Dalenergomash kicks off in April 1932, when a guy named Yakov Vezbin rolls into Khabarovsk, a gritty frontier town in the Soviet Far East. Vezbin wasn't just any bureaucrat. He was a visionary with a mission to turn this remote region into an industrial powerhouse. On August 17, 1932, under his leadership, the first stone of the Khabarovsk auto repair factory was laid in a ceremony that was more than just symbolic. The workers buried a letter to future generations in the foundation, a testament to their belief in what this factory could become. By May 1932, workers from across the Soviet Union started pouring into Khabarovsk. These were regular folks, some chasing a better life, others driven by a sense of duty to build up their country. Construction wasn't easy. The Far East was harsh, with brutal winters and scarce resources. Yet by 1934, the first mechanical assembly shop was up and running, cranking out parts for cars, tanks, ammunition, and even turbines and compressors for industries across the region. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The factory faced delays, and it wasn't until September 1936 that the first phase was officially completed. By October, the plant was in full swing, repairing trucks and tanks like a well-oiled machine. At the opening of the extraordinary 7th All-Union Congress of Soviets in November 1936, the factory's workers pulled off a miracle. They exceeded their yearly production targets. Even a big shot like Yen Gamarnik, a top Soviet military official, showed up to give them a pat on the back. Then came 1937, a grim year for the Soviet Union. The Great Purge swept through the country, and the factory wasn't spared. Yakov Vezbin, the man who got it all started, was arrested as an enemy of the people. His deputies, shop foremen, and even some workers were hauled away. The factory's output tanked, down to 56% of the plan in 1937 and a miserable 32% in 1938. 3 directors came and went in a single year, and morale was in the gutter. But hope wasn't lost. In 1939, a new director, Fyodor Kurakin, took the helm. This guy was a game changer. By 1940, he'd whipped the factory into shape, hitting its production goals and earning a prestigious Red Banner Award from the local Communist Party. The stage was set for the factory to become a wartime hero. To get why this factory was such a big deal, let's zoom out and look at the Soviet Far East in the 1930s. This was a region with huge potential but serious challenges. It was far from Moscow, with rough terrain, brutal weather, and a thin workforce. Japan's invasion of Manchuria in 1931 made the Far East a strategic hotspot, and the Soviets knew they needed to beef up their defenses. The Soviet government poured millions of rubles into the region, building railroads, ports, and military bases. The Trans-Siberian Railway became the lifeline connecting the Far East to the rest of the country. But industry? That was still a work in progress. The Khabarovsk factory, officially named Factory Number 105, was one of the first major players. It wasn't just fixing trucks, it was a symbol of the Soviet push to make the Far East a fortress. Economically, the factory was a massive investment. Building it cost a fortune, equivalent to tens of millions of dollars today. But it paid off. By the mid-1930s, it was producing critical parts and repairing military equipment, laying the groundwork for its wartime role. This was the Soviet version of the American can-do spirit, taking a big risk and making it work. My take: reading about the factory's early days, I'm struck by the sheer determination of the people involved. Imagine moving to a frozen, mosquito-ridden outpost to build a factory from scratch, all while the shadow of political purges looms over you. These workers and engineers weren't just building machines, they were building a future. It reminds me of America's own industrial pioneers, like those who powered the arsenal of democracy during World War II. The story of Factory Number 105 is a testament to what people can achieve when they refuse to give up. When Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in June 1941, everything changed. Factory Number 105 was renamed the Armored Vehicle Repair Base Number 105 and thrown into the deep end. It wasn't just about fixing trucks anymore. Now, it was producing mines, grenades, and spare parts for tanks and other military gear. The factory had to completely retool, and they did it fast. They even built their own machine tools from scratch, using blueprints drawn up on site. That's the kind of ingenuity that wins wars. The workforce was stretched thin, but they rose to the challenge. In the first 4 months of the war, the factory hired 1,100 new workers, including 628 teenagers. These kids, some as young as 14, worked 12-hour shifts alongside adults, churning out critical supplies for the front lines. It's hard to imagine that kind of sacrifice today, but it was their reality. World War II showed that tanks, no matter how advanced, could become obsolete overnight. German anti-tank guns tore through the armor of Soviet T-20 SXS and BTs, and even the new T-34s were in short supply. Factory Number 105 became a hub for keeping old tanks in the fight, upgrading them to take on modern threats. This wasn't just about slapping on extra armor, it was about survival. Every upgrade meant a better chance for tank crews to make it home. The workers in Khabarovsk knew this, and they poured their hearts into finding creative solutions. Economic angle: the Soviet war machine. The Soviet economy during World War II was a beast under pressure. Historians estimate that the USSR lost up to 30% of its industrial capacity when the Nazis overran the Western regions. The Far East, safely out of reach, became a critical hub for production. Factories like Number 105 were lifelines, keeping the Red Army supplied. In 1941, the Soviets built about 5,500 tanks. By 1945, that number had skyrocketed to 20,000 a year, thanks to a total shift to a war economy. Factory Number 105 wasn't a giant like the Euromash plant, but it punched above its weight. In 1942, it boosted output by 40% compared to pre-war levels, despite shortages of steel, fuel, and skilled workers. That's the kind of hustle that would make any American factory manager proud. The story of Factory Number 105 during the war reminds me of a beehive. Everyone working together, each person a vital part of the whole. From teenage workers to seasoned engineers, they kept the gears turning under insane pressure. It's a lesson in teamwork and resilience that resonates today, whether you're running a business or just trying to get through a tough day. These folks didn't have the luxury of giving up, and their story pushes me to keep going when things get rough. The Soviet-Japanese War, setting the stage. By August 1945, the war in Europe was over, but Japan wasn't ready to throw in the towel. Their Guandong Army in Manchuria was a force to be reckoned with, 49 divisions and 27 brigades, ready to defend their turf. The Soviets, fresh off their victory over Germany, geared up for a massive offensive known as the Manchurian Strategic Offensive Operation. Launched on August 9th, 1945, this campaign was a masterclass in military strategy. Soviet forces spread across three fronts: Zabaikal, First Far Eastern, and Second Far Eastern, crushed Japan's army in weeks. But the success didn't come easy. It took meticulous planning, including upgrading the tanks that would face Japan's forces, revamping the T-37 and T-38. The T-37 and T-38 were light, amphibious tanks from the 1930s, designed for reconnaissance and infantry support. By 1945, they were relics: thin armor, weak 7.62mm machine guns, and poor off-road performance. But the Far East had about 400 of these tanks, and scrapping them wasn't an option. The engineers at Factory Number 105 decided to give them a second life. Their goal? Boost firepower while keeping the tank's ability to float, which was crucial for navigating the swampy terrain of the Amur region. They swapped out the machine guns for 20mm SHVKT TNSH automatic cannons, a bold move for tanks with such tiny turrets. The team pulled off, fitting the cannon without sacrificing the secondary machine gun or the tank's buoyancy. The upgraded T-38 gained just 100 kilograms, though the turret became harder to rotate. Over 100 T-38s got this upgrade, limited only by a shortage of cannons. While these tanks didn't see combat in Manchuria, modern T-34s took the lead. They showed what the Khabarovsk team could do with limited resources, armoring up the BT-7. The BT-7, a fast, wheel-track tank, was a star of the 1930s Soviet arsenal. But by 1945, its armor was no match for modern anti-tank weapons. The Khabarovsk crew tackled this head-on with a unique armoring-up project. They added extra armor plates, some scavenged from wrecked BTs, and even captured German PZ.3 and PZ.4 tanks. How German tanks ended up in the Far East is a mystery. Maybe they were shipped there for study or salvage. This extra armor added 1.5 tons to the BT-7, but didn't slow it down too much. The new plates fit snugly, preserving access to the driver's hatch, a detail other armoring projects often botched. By January 1944, over 100 BT-7s had been upgraded, making them tougher than any Japanese tank, like the Chiha or Hago. Economic smarts. Why upgrading made sense. Building new tanks like the T-34-85 was expensive, around 135,000 rubles each in 1943, roughly $1.5 million today. Ayrımering obitihit. Maybe 10,000 to 15,000 rubles. That's a 10 to 1 savings, which was huge in a war-torn economy. Using salvaged armor, including German scraps, cut costs even further by reducing the need for fresh steel. This approach wasn't just about saving money, it was about speed. New tanks took months to build, upgrading old ones took days. Factory number 105 showed how to stretch resources, a lesson that resonates with American businesses that thrive on efficiency and innovation. My take: the Khabarovsk upgrades remind me of a classic American hot rod shop, taking an old jalopy and turning it into a beast. These engineers weren't just fixing tanks, they were outsmarting the enemy with what they had. It's the kind of scrappy, creative problem-solving you see in stories of American inventors like Thomas Edison or even modern tech startups. The Far East crew proved you don't need the best tools, just the best ideas. The Manchurian Challenge. The Manchurian Offensive was no walk in the park. The Greater Shingan Range, a 1,300 kilometers mountain chain, was a nightmare for tanks. Muddy terrain, swollen rivers, and Japanese fortifications made it tough going. The Japanese had built strong points, like the one at Mount Baitoshin, designed to stop Soviet armor in its tracks. But the Red Army, with air support and fast-moving tank units, powered through. Japan's Guangdong Army had over 1,100 tanks, but they were outdated. The Chiha and Hago couldn't hold a candle to the Soviet T-34-85, let alone the upgraded BT-7s. Most Japanese tanks were captured in their depots before they could even fight. The BT-7 in action. While the T-38 upgrades didn't see combat, the armored BT-7s did. The 77th Separate Tank Brigade, formed in the Far East in 1941, included these upgraded tanks. At least one was spotted in Harbin during the Victory Parade on September 16, 1945, identifiable by its thicker driver's hatch. The brigade fought its way through Manchuria, ending the war in Harbin, a fitting finale for the Khabarovsk crew's handiwork. Economic impact. Manchuria's riches. The Soviet victory in Manchuria wasn't just a military win. It was an economic jackpot. Manchuria's coal, iron, and farmland were worth billions of rubles, boosting the Soviet Far East economy. Factory number 105, now transitioning to Dalenergomash, shifted to making turbines and conveyors, helping rebuild the region. The Manchurian offensive shows what happens when preparation meets opportunity. The upgraded BT-7s weren't the stars of the show, but they played their part. It's like a baseball team where every player, even the bench warmers, contributes to the win. This story reminds us that every effort counts, whether you're a factory worker in 1945 or chasing your own goals today. After the war, Factory number 105 became the Khabarovsk machine building plant, named after Lazar Kaganovich. It shifted to civilian production, making turbines, fans, and conveyors. But its wartime legacy lived on in the stories of its workers and the tanks they rebuilt. Today, Dalenergomash is still around, though not the giant it once was. It stands as a symbol of the Far East industrial might and the people who made it happen. This story has lessons for us today. First, ingenuity can overcome any obstacle. Look at how the Khabarovsk team turned junk into jewels. Second, efficiency matters. Upgrading old tanks instead of building new ones save time and money, a strategy any American business could learn from. Finally, it's about people. The workers, from teens to engineers, showed that teamwork and grit can move mountains. The story of Dalenergomash hits home because it's about regular people doing extraordinary things. It's like the American workers who built tanks and planes during World War II, turning the U.S. into the arsenal of democracy. Their story inspires me to keep pushing forward, no matter the odds. It's a reminder that history isn't just about big names. It's about the unsung heroes who make it happen. That's a wrap on our epic journey through the story of Dalenergomash and its game-changing tanks. We've seen how a small factory in the Soviet Far East took on Japan's war machine, how its workers overcame purges and wartime shortages, and how their ingenuity helped win a crucial campaign. This is a story of grit, innovation, and the power of ordinary people to make history. Subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment. What part of this story blew your mind? Was it the teenage workers pulling 12-hour shifts, or the engineers turning old tanks into samurai slayers? Share this article with your friends, and let's get more people hooked on this incredible history. Together, we can keep these stories alive for the next generation. Subscribe and comment below. I poured my heart into this tale to bring you the thrill of 1945's Far East. If you loved it, spread the word and tell us what hit you hardest. Let's keep the conversation going. See you in the next story, 3-3S.